Well, hello and welcome. My name's Penny. I live in the southeast of England with my husband Pete and my 5 chickens. And yeah, time's moving on now, October. And we've had some sunshine and it's been, not too bad. Bit stormy, bit rainy, bit sunny, all of that. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag. So I hope you've had a nice time too. So what I want to show you is a bag I've made, because a couple of episodes ago, a few episodes now, I showed you all the bags I made after my dad had died. And someone saw that and said, would you make me one? So I said yes. Here it is. It's made from Tilda fabric. It's got the squares along the bottom, squares along the top. It's got the Tilda buttons on it. They're metal, but covered in Tilda fabric. And then, as I say, these bags are made just as you would make a quilt. They're bound the same as you bind a quilt. You do that box bottom, binding along the side. I bound the top and I put it on a pocket. The person who this is going to lives in the country in Sussex, and I thought she'd like that. So that's Tilda again, and I hope she likes it. What I like about these bags is they're very light indeed, so they don't add any weight to what you're carrying. They're quite warm when you've got them up against you, if you want a bit of warmth, in the winter. And they sit nicely on the shoulder because I make the straps just that inch wide, because otherwise they fall off my shoulders. Oh, another message. And you can get a nice lot in them, you've seen. I mean, they pack a good deal in. So that's Tilda's Hot Chocolate book, if anyone fancies making it. And I can highly recommend it. So that's what I've been doing this week. And I was going to show you this quilt, because the reason I want to show you this quilt is because it's the same 12-inch squares as the one I showed you that was Lois's quilt. But the difference is you can buy groups of fabric. So Tilda does a group of fabric, like Tilda's Tiny Farm that I'm doing for Tommy, or Garden Flowers, or Woodland Walk, all of that. They have titles, and it's a range of fabric, usually about 10. And of course, do you remember I showed you on the edge, on the selvage, they usually put all the colours, and so they're all the colours that are made in that group of fabrics. Now, I've got it here actually. With this one, of course, I had to make sure they blended, because they were just bits and bobs from here and there. But for this one, I bought a group of fabrics, and you'll see how they blend. So the same 12 squares. Oh, that's a log cabin. It's rather effective, isn't it? You can put log cabin all different ways. If you twist that, that's supposed to be the fire, and then that's the gloom of the room, and that's the bright of the room. Now you can make those quite big. You can put them all different ways that make all different patterns. Again, I did a big double bed quilt for Pete in log cabin. I'll show you that one day. Here's the one I often say that I teach people. But can you see how all the fabrics blend. You haven't got to worry about matching them. The red in this is the same red as the red in this. The green in that is the same one as the green there. And so it makes life a lot easier. There's my storm at sea again. I remember doing that one, and I was using this light for each corner, and I had enough for 3 corners, but literally not enough for 4. Even as small as that is, I didn't have any more. I'd used it. And so, I was beside myself. I had to make the decision, and I chose to put in an accent. Oh, there's the garden path again. Let's show you the middle ones. I'll show you standing up. That's called card trick. But can you see what I mean? All the fabrics blend. As opposed to having to, when you do scrappy, but there's something about a scrappy quilt. Right, and I think it was episode 2 or 3, I showed you a scrappy quilt just made of squares. Just squares, and the designs that you can make. I'll pop that back up here, and that's scrappy, but there's a certain charm about scrappy too. So nothing's wrong in the quilting world. Whatever you choose to do is right. So that's my little bit about crafting. So I'm going to go on and do the TA bit now, and we're on to adult. Right, let me get myself together. Okay, I've got myself together. So we're going to talk about adult, and here's adult. There's just one part to adult. And it's the here and now. Do you remember parent? Thoughts, feelings and behaviours copied from parents or grown-up figures. Do you remember child? Thoughts, feelings and behaviours replayed from childhood. Copied, replayed. And adult is the here and now. So when we make a decision in adult, we're using all the resources, everything we know about now. Everything that's up here now, that's not contaminated by the past. Some people are very good at it, but most people aren't. And most people, in my experience, don't access their adult. And life becomes a lot easier when we do. When we don't come from copied, when we don't come from replayed, when we make the decision now. And people have often asked me, how do I make that decision now? Well, that's what we're going to go on to learn. Remember, thoughts, feelings and behaviours. Copied, replayed. And so what I say to help you get into adult now, how am I feeling? What do I want? What do I need? All people said to me, Doesn't that mean that's selfish? No. Thinking about self is not selfish. In fact, the more we think about self, the better we're going to be. Because we can think about what we want, how we feel, how do I feel, what do I want, what do I need? We'll talk about that next time in more detail. But if we know that, then we can make an informed choice from adult, and that will be right for us. I mean, it doesn't mean we're selfish. Supposing somebody's asked me to do something, just supposing. In adult, I say, how do I feel? Exhausted. I'm exhausted. That's how I feel. What do I want? I want to go to bed. What do I need? I need to make myself a hot drink and get myself up there. However, I'm an adult and I can choose what to do. I'm no shoulds or musts, no rebellious child saying shan't or oh I should. No, I'm making an informed choice, and the informed choice is I can do it, I know I can do it, I'll help them, and then I'll get myself straight to bed. I'm making that choice. So it doesn't mean I'm selfish, it doesn't mean to say, oh no, I'm going to get up those stairs. No, it means I make an informed choice, but I know how I'm thinking, feeling, wanting, needing. We'll talk about that a lot more, but adult is the here and now, no contamination. So I'm just going to read you a little bit. I think it sums it up, and it's the best way of me talking about these ego states and how they shift. It's what we do. We shift through them. Of course, we do have our favourites, and we can make what we call, let me see if I can show you, and it's something, we're talking about journaling. It's something you might like to do. So draw yourself a line. Controlling parent, nurturing parent, adult, free child, adapted child. I would put rebellious child in there too. And then do yourself what they call an egogram and see over maybe say a few days or whatever it is, it's up to you. Draw your egogram, and then you'll find out what you learn about yourself. I mean, I can just access that, but you may need to draw it. It's a good thing. See, am I usually an adapted child? Oh, free child, rebellious child, controlling parent, nurturing parent. And don't forget the, plus and the minus and all of that. Yeah. So if you want to do some journaling, that might be a good thing to do. And just notice your behaving, your behaviours, your thoughts and your feelings. So I'm going to read you this, see if you can get the gist of it. Jane is driving her car along a road crowded with traffic. Second by second, she's observing the position and speed of other vehicles around her. She's looking out for road signs. She controls her car in response to what's going on round about her, here and now. Jane is in her adult ego state. Just then, another driver passes Jane, cuts in sharply in front of her. For a fraction of a second, Jane feels scared that the two cars will crash. She flashes a glance in her driving mirror, sees the road behind is clear, and slows slightly so the crash is avoided. All the time, she has stayed in her adult ego state. Her feeling of scare was an appropriate response to the here and now danger, helping her body react more quickly in order to avoid a collision. Now, with the driver vanishing up the road ahead, Jane shakes her head. and purses her lips in disapproval. Turning to her passenger, she says, "Drivers like that ought not to be allowed on the road." At this moment, Jane has moved into her parent ego state. When she was little, she'd often sat beside her father as he drove his car and watched him as he showed his disapproval of other drivers' errors by shaking his head and pursing his lips in just that way. A minute or two later, Jane pulls off the road at her office. Looking at her watch, she sees that because of the heavy traffic, she's late for an important meeting with her boss. Her heart sinks, and for a moment she feels panic-stricken. Now Jane has shifted into child ego state. She has contacted old memories of arriving at school late and feeling scared of the punishment she imagined she might get from her school teacher. Her feeling of panic is a response to these old memories, not to anything that's likely to happen in her grown-up situation. At this instant, Jane is not consciously aware that she's replaying her childhood. If you were to ask her, "Does this situation remind you of anything in your childhood?" she might then bring that old schoolroom scene back to conscious memory. Alternatively, she might have buried those painful recollections so thoroughly that she would not be able to remember them immediately. She might have to take longer, even perhaps go into therapy, if she wanted to bring those deeper memories back into consciousness. As she now re-experiences her childhood feelings and thoughts, Jane also shows some behaviours which she first showed all these years ago as a schoolgirl. Her heart races. She lifts her hand to beside her mouth and widens her eyes. From close up, you'd be able to see that she's broken out into a light sweat. Then, after a moment or two, Jane thinks to herself, "Wait a minute. What am I getting scared of? My boss is a reasonable woman. She'll understand why I'm late. Anyway, we can make up the lost time by taking a bit off the coffee break." Jane is back in her adult ego state. Her passenger sees her relax and take her hand away from her mouth. Jane's face breaks into a smile and she laughs. Her laugh is the laugh of the grown-up woman she is. It sounds quite different from the nervous giggle of a scared child. So I hope that's helped explain the PAC model, the parent, adult, child. Oh, it's faded with years of use. And we're going to go on to talk a lot more about that. So next time, I'll go over the parent and the adult and the child, and we'll look at some illustrations, some examples, let's put it like that, to help you really get the thrust of what it's all about. So it's Pete's piece now, and I read his story. So I'll see you after that. It's called The Oak Tree, and Pete wrote this, as I said before, I think, after his dad died. He just started writing a few stories, and this was one of them. The Oak Tree. I stood looking at the tree in front of me. It was an oak, not yet at full maturity. That would take another 20 to 30 years, but it was impressive just the same. It stood in a gap of a large overgrown hedge of hawthorn and blackthorn, with dog rose, wild privet, and hazel scattered haphazardly amongst it. The path I was on ran either side of the oak, and was overhung by long tender shoots of bramble, making every effort to close the gap in the hedge. It was early summer. I was 8 years old, and the year was 1953. It was also the start of the summer holidays, and a few months after my family and I moved from Palmer's Green in North London to Potter's Bar, a sleepy country town in Middlesex, made famous by a murder on the golf course. Our new house was a 2-bedroomed bungalow with a front and back garden. What made it so exciting for me was running adjacent to the bottom of the back garden, separated only by a picket fence, was a large field, not farmed like the ones behind it, but wild and unkempt, with long grass and isolated hawthorn bushes, and running from next door's garden to the farmer's field beyond was the hedge. Up until then, I had only made short explorations, not straying far from the back garden. I couldn't wait to explore more fully, and that morning had leapt out of bed as soon as I had awoke, devouring the breakfast Mum had cooked for me in record time, and with her shouts still in my ears of "Don't get lost," I was through the gate in the picket fence and was now at the first stage of investigation. "You'll never climb it." A voice broke into my thoughts. I turned to see a boy of about my age standing behind me. "You'll never climb it," the voice said again. "I never have. It's a hard tree to climb." I looked at the boy. He was about my height, but chubby. His face, underneath neatly combed brill-creamed blonde hair, had a smug look about it. The rather pompous voice went on, "I can't climb that tree, so if I can't, you can't." I didn't answer, but turned back to study the tree. It did look difficult, but not as difficult as some I'd climbed with my cousin, whose name was Peter. Peter lived in Chigwell, and I often used to go and stay. His garden backed onto Epping Forest, and when you went through his back garden gate, you were surrounded by oaks, a lot bigger and older than the one I was studying now. Cousin Peter was 14 and an expert tree climber, and had taught me what to look for, which would enable impossible-looking trees climbable. The only problem with the one I was looking at now was the height of the lower branches, but I noticed there were two small ones sticking out like parallel bars. Not too thick, so they would enable a handhold. With a running jump, I knew I could reach them. I took a few paces back and heard the boy say how wise I was in not attempting the climb. I think he was going to say more, but I didn't give him the opportunity. I ran and jumped. One hand gripped the front branch and then the other. I let the momentum carry my legs forward and up. First one leg over the second branch, then the other. A twist of my body and the first part was over. I sat for a moment, bum on one branch, feet on the other, and then started to climb. Moments later, I was at the top, my head almost sticking out of the canopy of leaves. This is where I loved to be. How exhilarating it was to sway with the branches, smelling the slight musty aroma of bark and leaves, the wind in my face. I wondered if Robin Hood had felt the same when he lived in Sherwood Forest. I was still at the age where I thought he was real. I suddenly remembered the boy and, looking down, watched his desperate attempts to do what I had just done. Fat chance of that, I thought, watching his feeble efforts at jumping. I had been taught by an expert tree climber, and looking at the boy could see that he was heavier than me, and by the noise he was making, nowhere near as fit. I turned my attention to studying the view, and what a view it was. A patchwork of fields stretching as far as the eye could see, some with corn growing, others with cattle grazing. A line of Lombardy poplars protecting the corn from the wind, which at the moment was but a breeze gently swaying in each tree in turn. A river snaking its way to who knows where, but eventually its waters reaching the sea, but now looking like a silver necklace studded with diamonds from the sun's reflection on it. And as I continued my search, I spotted way in the distance the square tower of a church with woods on 3 sides. Turning my gaze towards home, I could see that the path that I had been standing on led through the hedge to a field as wild as unkempt as the one behind my house. So, there were 2 fields with the hedge in the middle separating them. Even better, I thought. I felt excited again, thinking of all the places to explore, but that would be in the future. It was time to return to the ground, and the boy who, exhausted by his efforts, was now sitting with his back to the tree. A sulky look had replaced the smug one that he had had earlier. As I was climbing down, I noticed a rather plump lady come out of one of the bungalows and walk to the end of the garden next to the field. There she stopped and, cupping her hands to her mouth, called, "Colin, Colin," sounding rather like a cuckoo. This was answered by the boy, who had leapt to his feet. "Coming, coming," then looked up to me, shouted, "That's my mum calling me. I've got to help with the shopping. See you later." Not if I can help it, I thought. Thinking of his first words to me was bad enough, having adults telling me what I couldn't do, let alone a kid my own age. Well, there you are. That was Pete's story, and I thought it was worth reading. So I'm going to do fascinating fact now. Yeah, it'll all run on. And it's about lighthouses. Now, when I was on St Agnes, the Isles of Scilly, Sunday afternoon, they said, "Anyone want to go and see the Bishop's Rock Lighthouse?" We said, "Yes, please." The day, well, I can't tell you. It was like a mill pond, and it's quite a way out. And I remember thinking, oh, we're a long way in this boat. You know, it was one of those with the engine, and we opened boat, and off we went. And oh, what an experience. It's 49 metres high, the Bishop's Rock Lighthouse. I'll put a couple of photos here because we took some, not enough. I mean, you know, it wasn't the days when I took loads of photos, but what a memorable day in my head. Like a mill pond, up, and he told us the whole story of how they built it and what it was like living there as the lighthouse keepers. And by the side of the boats were dolphins right up close. It was a magical Sunday afternoon. And then we went with Lois and Harry, our grandchildren, and that Sunday afternoon, years later, "Yes, do you want to go and see the Bishop's Rock Lighthouse?" I said, "Come on, guys, we've got to go and see it." But it was a really misty day, and we went, and it was a completely different trip, because there we were in the mist, and then 49 metres high, we saw this lighthouse, and we heard all the story again. I was quite glad to get back that day. But, you know, I've always loved lighthouses. I've got a lighthouse over there. I'll take a photo of it. It's a light that my friend Heather bought for me. And there's something about it. And of course, I can see the lighthouse from the bottom of my garden. And the lighthouse here it was one of the first that was built. It's holiday cottages now, and I was looking on the Google, North Foreland Lighthouse. Oh, they look beautiful. I thought I'd love to go and have a holiday down there. I mean, I could just go round the corner and come back and feed the girls, just for a change. They look beautiful. And of course, you've got that lovely view, and you've seen it. You've seen the birds on the top of it, haven't you? So I want to talk about, though, I've got my notes. I want to talk about, the North Foreland Lighthouse is 26 metres high. So that's a bit different to 49, isn't it? But I want to talk about the Eddystone Lighthouse. Now, the original tower Henry Winstanley's, was completed in 1698, and it was wooden, and it was built on a small rock in the open sea. Can you imagine? And this was destroyed in a storm of 1703, and a new tower was built, and that was completed in 1709. But then they had a massive fire, and it was devastated in 1755. So John Smeaton was recommended to rebuild this Bishop's Rock Lighthouse. No, Eddystone. In Plymouth it is, the Eddystone Lighthouse. And he's credited as the father of civil engineering, and he was asked to design this new lighthouse. And he used concrete. He took the shape of an oak tree as his inspiration, with a large heavy base deeply rooted in the ground to give it greater stability. It proceeded upwards with a curved tapering pillar, all the while keeping the centre of gravity low. And it was so successful, this lighthouse, that what he wrote around the lighthouse, he recognized, he didn't take the fact that he was the designer. He said no. He said, and he quoted from the Bible, the book of Psalms, where it says, "Except the Lord build the house, they labour in vain that they build it." And he put it round the top because he gave God the credit for the stability of this lighthouse. Why? Because he took the design from the oak tree. And then the last stone set on the 24th of August 1759, he put the phrase "Praise be to God," and it was impressed in the stone over the door to the lantern. And once again, his biographer noted, Smeaton thought that all honest work should be dedicated to him through whose infinite goodness we are permitted to achieve it. And Smeaton's lighthouse stood till 1877, when it was decommissioned. And it was then moved to the land, and you can go to Plymouth and you can actually see it and go round it. But the foundations of the original tower proved too strong to be dismantled. So just like a stump of an old felled oak tree, they were left there, and the new tower built a short distance away. So Smeaton's design is still visible and is a memorial to a designer who recognised a greater designer. And he credits God with the design because of the oak tree. So it's amazing, isn't it? How, and that was what Pete loved, that oak tree, and how he could climb them because they were so sturdy. So I'm going to, as you'll have seen, I've put some pictures of the lighthouses up there. So that's my fascinating fact for this week, and that's Pete's piece. So this week the film is a little bit different because my grandson Nicholas, who we took to Scotland when he was 16, we took him to Islay, an island, and we flew up there. Oh, that was quite exciting. I don't know if he watches. I shouldn't think he does, but I think his wife might watch. That was so exciting, Ellie. Well, you know the bad weather we get when we're travelling. They said we got to Glasgow Airport, and then we had to get on this tiny little plane that seated about 8. And they said, "Look, we've got to go now. And we got on the plane, and we headed right into this Scottish storm. Oh my giddy aunt, how we did it, I don't know. It was going like that, and it was going like that, and it was so exciting. And we got off, and there we were on Islay, a Scottish island, and we had the pups. Oh, it's Islay and another island. Oh, I've forgotten it now. The paps of, I'll put it up. My brain's gone. I've been doing too much talking. Anyway, tiddly pomp what? So we got off the plane, And boy, oh, it was exciting. But global warming had started then. Nicholas is, I think he's 31 now. Anyway, he was 16 then. And you used to go there and see like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of geese. They all came from Greenland and wherever and landed on Isla. Anyway, we loved it. Do you know what? I cried for a whole week. After we took him home, I literally cried for a whole week because I thought that boy is 16, is going to be growing into a man and it's never going to be the same again. And I mourned for being with him for that whole week. It was so special. Anyway, he's just gone with his wife up to Scotland. And they've had 2 weeks up there. And guess what they saw? You know that white-tailed sea eagle that I saw that started me birding? They saw it. So I'm going to put that film up, make a little film. And then I'm going to show you some birds that we saw when we went in 2017. We went just down from Inverness. And we got the train to Inverness. And then we did a little birding tour. And anyway, I'll tell you all about it whilst I do the little film. I'm going to put the pictures of the birds up and I'm going to explain it. So yeah, it's Bonnie Scotland. It's pure de brilliant, so it is. I can speak Scotch, you know. Oh, I'll tell you that little story, shall I? Well, have I told you it? Maybe I just told you it in my dreams. But as a counsellor, we used to have to go in for duty days. And duty days meant taking all the phone calls where people were in a dreadful, dreadful state. I didn't like duty days. I didn't do too many of them because they said I didn't have to. I don't know if I was too old or what, but anyway, they said, don't you worry about it, Penny. And I was really pleased about that because I wasn't, that wasn't my thing to do duty days. That was an added extra. And they said, don't worry about it. You concentrate on your clients. So I was really glad about that. Anyway, on this duty day, my line manager was Scots. And it was really pretty heavy. We had some heavy duty cases. And I'd taken this case to her because, we needed to talk about it. What were we going to be doing? And just to break the ice, my friend Heather had taught me, seize a bit of the cherry off your hand for to keep the head in ya. Well, all you Scots out there, you'll know what that means. But us, Sassenachs, give us a piece of chewing gum before I beat the living daylights out of you. Well, I don't know if I said the last bit, but I might have done because that's what I'd been practicing. It takes me weeks. Well, it took me years. Seize a bit of the cherry. It's probably still not right. I'm sorry. Anyway, just to deflate this tense situation. That's what I said. Seize a bit of your cherry off your head before I kick the head in you. And she's sitting there. And I thought she was going to either burst out laughing. I was obviously in free child, wasn't I? I thought she's going to burst out laughing or she's going to tell me off or give me the sack or, or just look at me as if I was completely nuts. Do you know what she said? Because she was Scots. She was Scottish. She said, oh, I can't do a Scottish accent, as you know. Oh, she said, Chaddy. We don't call it Chaddy. I come from Edinburgh. That's Glaswegian. She totally took it in her stride, as if I was just talking normally. And we carried on working out all these cases. It stuck with me. It was so funny. Yeah. So anyway, going up to Scotland and doing some birding is pure de brilliant, so it is. And that's the only words that I can say. So I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'll see you next week. So have a lovely week, and I hope you find some time to do what you like to do. So I'll see you then. Bye.